Elkridge, Maryland is a quiet suburb in Howard County. A bedroom community 10 miles southwest of Baltimore. Kathleen Goulden lives in Elkridge and works at a popular nightclub in nearby Baltimore's trendy downtown brokerage complex.
Kathleen has worked at the club since it opened 2 years earlier, but she's still an Elkridge girl at heart.
Kathleen is home alone on the night of July 3rd, 1989, having visited her parents earlier in the evening. That night, someone breaks into her apartment and kills Kathleen Goulden. It's a violent death.
The next day, investigators find a discarded pizza box on the ground in the building's parking lot.
Usually a cold case isn't solved until you have some pretty compelling evidence.
Could a fast food appetite mean that a killer will be finally caught? Ellicott City is a quiet little hamlet that lies on the western edge of Baltimore, Maryland, situated just north of Washington, D.C.
Ellicott City is a nice place to retire to, or a good choice for young families wanting to live near Baltimore but far away from the bustle of the city.
It's in Howard County, and this entire county went through a kind of hell in the late 70s, early 80s when a string of violent murders terrorized its peaceful residents.
As any small town would be, a series of murders that sort of have a ring of being connected put people on edge.
The first killings happened on April 26, 1979. That's when 58-year-old Carvel Faulkner and his 56-year-old wife Sarah were slain in their well-appointed home on Montgomery Road.
Carvel Faulkner was a successful businessman, the owner of a chicken feed and sanitation company.
The Faulkners were discovered by a worker who was doing a job on their property. He found the back kitchen door ajar.
The Faulkner murders were extremely violent. Carvel Faulkner was shot in the neck.
Sarah Faulkner's throat was slit open with a kitchen knife. Her body was bound by the hands and feet, and she'd been stabbed repeatedly in the back.
It was a horribly bloody scene. Carvel's body was slumped on the floor at the edge of the bed. Sarah's body was found face down on the bed next to him in a pool of blood.
Carvel Faulkner was a big man. He was 6'3" and weighed close to 300 pounds. But there was no apparent sign of a struggle, and there were no forced locks or broken windows in the home.
The murderer left almost $1,000 in cash untouched. And although there was a considerable number of valuables in the house, it looked like none of them had been taken.
If the killer wasn't motivated by robbery, why on earth would he or she kill this well-established older couple?
The local rumor mill goes on overdrive after the Faulkner murders.
Some residents speculated that the couple were victims of a contract killing.
Police theorized that an acquaintance, possibly an employee, arrived early in the morning to talk to Carvel Faulkner.
They ran a trash hauling company, and there were other people that they had been either angry with or they had had some kind of shady dealing.
Maybe they got into an argument and things escalated from there.
Despite weeks of investigation by local police, no suspects are identified.
The unsolved killing of an older, respected couple within a quiet rural county creates this ripple effect on everyone living around them.
If the killings of Carvel and Sarah Faulkner aren't enough to spook the community, residents of nearby Elkridge get a nasty shock. When on January 15, 1980, a female mannequin torso is found dangling from a tree branch.
This mannequin is obviously there to shock, but is it a prank by thoughtless teenagers or something much more sinister? For sure, it's malicious, and news of the mannequin spreads like wildfire.
The entire county gets way more nervous about what might happen next.
Just 5 weeks later, the residents of Howard County received more terrible news.
Rebecca Davis was unmarried. Her friends called her Dolly. She lived alone in the stately home her family had owned for generations in the Lawyers Hill district.
Dolly was like a lot of the residents of this area. She came from money and lived quietly in the rural part of Howard County.
When her housekeeper came to work at Dolly Davis's house on February 22nd, she saw Dolly's car parked half in and half out of her garage. It was immediately clear that something was badly amiss.
Dolly was nowhere in sight, but since her car was there, it seemed that she must be nearby.
The police and search authorities were alerted, and after an intensive search, her body was discovered in a shallow grave at the far end of her property.
Dolly Davis really didn't have a lot of places to run because she was so secluded. She was found in a backyard along a fence line.
Dolly Davis was a beloved member of the community. She was born into a life of privilege, but she helped the poor, doing volunteer missionary work in Haiti.
Dolly also tutored local children in less fortunate neighborhoods.
At the time of her death, even though she's 70 years old, Dolly was still tutoring kids at Woodson Elementary School, which is in nearby Cherry Hill.
Dolly was a person of enormous goodwill. To say that the community was saddened by her senseless murder would be an understatement.
The local coroner determined that Dolly Davis had been dead and buried for a week, and that she had been killed sometime around February 15th.
She'd been stabbed in the neck 9 times with a short blade like a pocket knife. She had several defensive wounds on her arms.
Although the police didn't release the information at the time, she had also been sexually assaulted.
You can imagine how terrifying Dolly's killing would have been for the Howard County residents. Why are their decent, law-abiding neighbors being viciously murdered?
The murder of Dolly Davis took place just 1 month after that ghoulish, bloody mannequin was found hanging in a tree in Elkridge. Then, 1 month after the kindly old lady was slaughtered, a second mannequin shows up in Howard County.
Mannequin number 2 was the next in a series of grisly mannequin displays that were left in trees across the Elkridge area in the coming months.
They did start to pop up shortly before Dolly Davis's murder, and they were investigated extensively by the Howard County Police Department.
Are these mannequin displays connected to the unsolved murders? Is the killer trying to tell people something? With so many questions, neighbors each had their own dark answers.
Every month, another mannequin appears hanging in a tree somewhere in Howard County.
1 mannequin a month for an entire year, a dozen in all. Or sometimes just their disembodied limbs.
Imagine the terror that these mannequins would cause to people living in the largely rural community.
The mannequins all show mock signs of violence, some with extreme, extensive mutilation.
The police may not have publicly attached great significance to their appearance, but the public was clearly terrified.
Then, 1 year after Dolly Davis's murder, another grisly death comes to light. A child taking a shortcut through a neighbor's yard in the town of Catonsville, Baltimore County, comes across the remains of 68-year-old Evelyn Dietrich.
Just like Dolly Davis, Evelyn Dietrich was murdered in the backyard of her own property, bludgeoned, strangled, and likely sexually assaulted after her death.
After that, the mannequins simply stopped showing up, but the murders didn't.
In late December 1984, the remains of Iva Myrtle Watson are found in a grove of pine trees across from her Ellicott City house.
Iva Watson was trying to get to the house across the street, and she just never made it. And I just can't imagine the terror that woman must have felt.
The 81-year-old widow lived just down the road from Carvel and Sarah Faulkner. She had been bludgeoned and sexually assaulted. According to the autopsy, multiple traumas to the head was the cause of death.
Each one of these victims suffered an extremely violent death: stabbing, slashing, beating, and even strangling.
What fueled that behavior? Some kind of rage?
All the evidence points to an extremely disturbed individual, completely without remorse.
The police put everything they had at the time into catching the killer or killers.
So for 3 years, they had 30 detectives working on the Howard County murders. They employed a psychic. They traveled as far as Texas, and on the first anniversary of Dolly's death, they even staked out her gravesite.
5 murders in 5 years. Yet publicly, the police still say they don't see the cases as linked. So far, police say they consider these killings to be coincidental, until the events of July 4th, 1989, provide police with a critical clue. "23-year-old Kathleen Goulden has worked at downtown Baltimore nightclub Fat Tuesdays since it opened on Market Street 2 years before. Kathleen is well known and liked by residents in nearby Elkridge, where she lives. She grew up here.
Dad's an Elkridge volunteer firefighter. The family, a big one. It's tight. Mom and Dad, Margaret and Abner Goulden, live just down the street from Kathleen's apartment on Old Washington Boulevard.
Elkridge is 10 miles southwest of Baltimore. In the 60s, it became one of the most popular suburbs for families looking to relocate from the city.
Abner and Margaret felt that Baltimore was getting too rough. They wanted a safe community for their children to grow up in.
Kathleen was born after the family moved out of the city, and she's the 7th of 8 kids. Out of all the siblings, Kathleen was the only one to leave home before getting married.
She's a young woman looking to claim some independence in her life. Marriage can wait.
Kathleen gets back from visiting her folks down the street at around 8:30 p.m.
Even though tomorrow is Independence Day, she's in the bar business, so for sure, it'll be a busy workday for Kathleen.
She lives in a ground floor apartment. A neighbor glimpses her through a window watching TV just after 10 p.m. Sometime that night, Kathleen Goulden's young life is cut short. It's a brutal, senseless murder, and no one hears it happen.
The next day, Kathleen's sister Mary is contacted by someone at the bar where she works.
The place is hopping, the staff need help. Why hasn't Kathleen shown up yet?
Mary calls Kathleen at her home number, but there's no answer. She's worried about her sister, so she goes to Kathleen's apartment to check in on her.
Finding the door locked, Mary asks the building resident manager, Terry Fraser, to help her get inside. The door is double bolted, and the safety chain is on its hook. Mary finds her sister Kathleen lying dead in her bedroom. It's a devastating sight. Detective Stephen Grease, an investigator with the Violent Crimes Unit of the Howard County Police Department, is assigned to the case.
Grease, 40, was born in Baltimore and joined the Howard County Police Department as a radio dispatcher in 1967. By the time he was assigned to the Goulden case, he was one of the best investigators in the force.
It appears to Grease that Kathleen has been stabbed in the chest. She was found partially clothed, and Grease suspects she may have been sexually assaulted.
A young woman living alone, dies violently. One of the first things you ask yourself is it someone she knows, or was it a complete stranger? Is it premeditated, or is this a random act? Detective Grease searches for the weapon that was used to stab Kathleen, but comes up empty-handed.
Knowing that the door to the apartment had been locked until Mary and Terry Fraser forced it open, he checks the windows. Again, there is no sign of forced entry.
With no murder weapon and not much evidence to go on inside, the police fan out searching for clues.
In the building's parking lot, an officer finds an empty pizza box lying on the ground next to a parked car. There's a name written on it.
You never really know with these things. So police take the empty pizza box into evidence on the off chance it might provide a lead.
It turns out that the parked car belongs to Kathleen. This could be significant. Meanwhile, Detective Grease visits Kathleen's parents, Margaret and Abner Goulden, to offer his condolences. He gives them his assurance the police will do everything they can to find the person who killed their daughter.
This is the hardest job a policeman ever has to perform, telling a parent that their child is dead. But it's essential that investigators learn as much as they can and quickly about Kathleen's life and actions in the days and even the hours before she was killed.
Detective Grease interviews Kathleen's colleagues at the Baltimore nightclub she co-managed. Investigators want to know if the staff have ever seen Kathleen harassed by any of the patrons, or if anyone has taken a particular interest in her.
Pretty young women in the bar business are often bothered by male patrons.
Did Kathleen have any enemies at work? Could a bar patron have figured out where she lived?
The day after Kathleen Goulden's body is discovered, Howard County Police Sergeant Angus Park tells the press that Kathleen has been stabbed to death in her apartment on Old Washington Boulevard in Elkridge.
An autopsy being conducted by the state medical examiner's office is expected to determine if Kathleen was sexually assaulted.
Elkridge is paying close attention to Kathleen Goulden's killing. This is already a community on a knife edge because of the string of past unsolved murders. And this has been going on for several years now.
They were very on edge. Elkridge at the time was a pretty working class neighborhood. It was a very small townish, and everyone knew everyone else pretty much.
It's the 6th of July, 2 days after the discovery of Kathleen's lifeless body. And the state medical examiner's initial autopsy reveals a stunning discovery. Police initially thought Kathleen Goulden was stabbed to death. Now, 2 days later, they realize she was shot. Sometime on the night of July 3rd, 1989, Kathleen Goulden is slain in the bedroom of her ground floor apartment in Elkridge, a suburban community of Howard County, Maryland. Mary and her building superintendent, Terry Fraser, have to break down her door to get inside.
Detective Stephen Grease of the Howard County Police Department is the lead investigator on the case. At the crime scene, he determines that Kathleen was stabbed to death in the chest.
There is one potential lead, a discarded pizza box with a name on it that was found in the parking lot of Kathleen's apartment building.
The empty box was left on the ground next to Kathleen's parked car. Why? Why is it there? Police traced the name on the pizza box to a woman living in the neighboring county of Anne Arundel.
That address is miles away. Why would someone bring a pizza from that address to here?
On Friday, July 7th, Detective Grease and his partner, Detective John Noonan, visit an address in Anne Arundel County, where the pizza was originally delivered.
A lady lives at this residence. She says she ordered the pizza, which was delivered around 10 p.m. on the evening of July 3rd. She tells the detectives she shared the pizza with her boyfriend and a man named Vernon Clark.
When Vernon Clark left her place later that evening, he took the last few slices in the box so he could finish it later.
Who is Vernon Clark? And why is he eating pizza in Kathleen Goulden's parking lot, next to her parked car? It turns out that Vernon Clark is already known to police in Howard County.
He's a black man, 34 years old. Just a month earlier, in early June, Howard County Police Officer Maureen Carroll was called to Kathleen's parking lot on a complaint of loitering.
When the officer got to the scene, she found Vernon Clark sitting there, slumped in the front seat of a white Ford station wagon.
The officer wanted to know what Vernon Clark is doing, sitting low down on the seat of his parked car. Clark tells her he's having car trouble and he's got to wait for the engine to cool off before he can drive away.
It turns out that Clark has connections to at least one of the unsolved killings that terrified the residents of Howard County.
9 years earlier, Vernon Clark was interviewed in connection with the slaying of 70-year-old Dolly Davis after she was slashed to death outside her home in Lawyers Hill. Clark had worked for Dolly as a handyman.
On July 11th, 1 week after Kathleen's death, Clark sits down with the detectives to explain his actions on the night of July 3rd.
Clark tells him that he went to a house in Anne Arundel County and had pizza with a couple who are friends of his. Later that evening, he was going to visit friends in Baltimore, so he took the leftovers with him. On the way, he stopped in the parking lot of Kathleen's apartment building.
Clark tells police he eventually got to Baltimore, where he spent the night with his friends.
Clark also admits to having been in Kathleen's parking lot on a few occasions to look for cans in the trash, and that he'd looked into her windows once.
It's clear that police are not dealing with a model citizen here.
Despite all this, Clark categorically denies he entered Kathleen Goulden's apartment building on the night of July 3rd, or that he had anything to do with her death.
Police now have a prime suspect in Kathleen Goulden's vicious murder. In the residential suburb of Elkridge, Maryland, 10 miles southwest of Baltimore, Mary Goulden finds the body of her 23-year-old sister in her apartment on July 4th, 1989. She has been brutally murdered. Kathleen has a bloody injury to her chest. But outside, in Kathleen's parking lot, next to her parked car, police find a discarded pizza box. And latent fingerprints found on the pizza box turn out to be a match for 40-year-old Elkridge resident Vernon Lee Clark.
Clark is known to Howard County Police for a string of petty crimes. He lives with his mother in a nearby cottage on Furnace Avenue in Elkridge.
He was just considered this kind of weird guy. He worked in a slaughterhouse. Everybody kind of knew who he was. I don't think anybody ever really suspected, or at least didn't voice their suspicion that he may have been involved.
Vernon Clark works at Braun's Rendering Plant, an Elkridge facility that disposes of dead animals.
His job there, skinning dead animals and loading them into a boiler, earns him the nickname Stinky, for kind of obvious reasons.
Detective Grease goes to Braun's Rendering Plant and speaks with Clark's boss, Carol Braun.
Carol Braun tells the detective he keeps a 20-gauge shotgun on the job site. Police confiscate the shotgun, the hope being to connect it to the Goulden crime scene.
match the origin of a shotgun pellet than a bullet from a gun. But the gauge of the pellets in a shotgun shell can be telling.
Five weeks after Kathleen Goulden's murder, detectives obtain a warrant to gather physical evidence from Vernon Clark's person.
Police execute a search and seizure warrant to obtain blood and saliva samples from Clark, looking to find out whether his DNA is a match for semen found on Kathleen's body.
Clark wants no part of it. He is highly uncooperative. During his arrest, Clark actually bites one of the officers, which earns him an assault charge.
The use of DNA evidence in criminal cases was a brand new thing in the late 1980s.
DNA fingerprinting had only recently been discovered back then. It would completely revolutionize the field of forensic science.
DNA can immediately link criminals to crimes or exonerate individuals who have been wrongfully accused.
When DNA is first used to solve crimes, the technology for identifying a DNA sequence is highly specialized.
At this time, there was only one forensic lab in the whole US that could process Clark's DNA sample at the FBI's head office in Washington, D.C.
Also going to the Washington lab for analysis and matching: pellets from the shotgun at Braun's processing plant and pellets taken from Kathleen's body.
With just one lab able to do the work, testing would take time. And so for those seeking justice in the brutal slaying of Kathleen Goulden, it's a waiting game.
It's been 6 months since the murder of Margaret and Abner Goulden's beloved daughter Kathleen in Elkridge, Maryland.
Kathleen's parents won't wait for police to solve their daughter's murder case. So they start a fund that offers a reward to anyone who can help solve it.
By January of 1990, the fund has grown to $6,000, much of it contributed by Elkridge business leaders who know the family.
Imagine what it would be like for the parents in this situation. The sense of frustration with the lack of progress, the feeling of helplessness.
Elkridge residents have certainly not forgotten the 5 murders that came before Kathleen's killing.
So now imagine the fear and apprehension they'd be experiencing. A half year has gone by and Kathleen's killer is still at large. And yet, police are still resistant to the idea that there's a serial killer on the loose in Howard County.
A Howard County police spokesman said, quote, "There's not a phantom killer. We don't see that. There are no maniacs running around the neighborhoods of Elkridge."
At that point, I don't know if the police were so much concerned about any kind of profile as just finding evidence to either confirm their suspicions or dispel them. And once they ran out of investigative leads, they just really didn't have anything other than he remained a suspect.
While police wait for forensic test results to come back from the FBI, Detective Grease tries to connect Clark to the earlier unsolved murder cases.
For years, Vernon Clark supplemented his rendering plant wages by doing odd jobs around the town for elderly folks.
Turns out he did gardening work for Evelyn Dietrich. And for a while, he was a handyman for Dolly Davis.
Bingo.
"23-year-old Kathleen Goulden is murdered without explanation early in the morning of July 4th, 1989. The cause of death, a single blast to the chest from a 20-gauge shotgun.
Her death was the latest in a string of unexplained murders in Howard County, Maryland over the past several years.
That all changes when a label on a discarded pizza box in Kathleen's parking lot leads police to 34-year-old Vernon Lee Clark. He is now their prime suspect. The lead investigator on the case, Detective Stephen Grease of the Howard County Police Violent Crimes Unit, sends DNA samples taken from Clark's body to the FBI's lab in Washington for analysis. Six months later, on Tuesday, January 23, 1990, Detective Grease receives the DNA test results.
Clark's DNA does have the same genetic makeup as the semen found on Kathleen's body.
Once you had this profile, once you had the statistical breakdown of 1 in however many it was, and I think it was in the billions, to exclude everybody else except for Vernon Clark.
On Friday morning, January 26, 1990, while stopping at a convenience store on his way to work, Clark is arrested without incident. Clark is charged with first-degree murder, assault, and breaking and entering in the slaying of Kathleen Golden.
Once Clark is in custody, he becomes less cooperative. He refuses to sign documents during an initial appearance before a district court commissioner and is held without bail in the Howard County Detention Center to await trial.
Detective Grease telephones Kathleen's mother to tell her the positive news. An arrest has finally been made in connection with her daughter's death. Days later, the family announced they plan to return donations they received for their reward fund.
Detective Grease strongly suspects Clark is responsible for several prior murders in Howard County.
Within a week of Clark's January 26th arrest, county and state police reopened the files on 2 of the cold cases.
Vernon Clark was interviewed by police at the time of Dolly Davis's death, but he wasn't considered a suspect at that time. And back then, they couldn't use his DNA to link him forensically to the case.
Clark did gardening work for Evelyn Dietrich, and he was a handyman for Dolly Davis.
He'd worked off and on for the Faulkners' poultry feed and sanitation company. He did odd job work for Dolly Davis and Evelyn Dietrich. He may have recognized Iva Myrtle Watson's vulnerability when he was at the Faulkners, who lived just down the road.
Vernon Clark was a suspect in pretty much all of these murders based on MO. They were secluded areas. They were elderly people. There were evidence that he had been stalking them for a while.
He found ways to draw them out of their rural homes in the evening.
He would unscrew light bulbs outside their houses. He would cut their phone lines. And it was a very planned, deliberate method to try to get them out of the house. He did that in both Dolly Davis and Iva Watson. So Dolly Davis's case had some DNA left over. She had been sexually assaulted, and there was some biological material left over.
Locked up in the Howard County Detention Center, Vernon Clark gives an interview to the press.
He's forthcoming about his drug use, telling a reporter that on the night Kathleen died, he was on a heavy drug binge and in no condition to point a gun.
He also claims that if there was ever any trouble in town, the police always blamed him.
Clark says, "I've got trouble with reading and writing and I'm black. Put that all together and I'm the solution to the cops' frustration."
He also makes a point of saying that he hates guns and was always afraid of the gun at the plant where he works.
Vernon Clark's employer vouches for his character.
Carol Braun tells a Howard County Sun reporter that Vernon never ever wanted to touch that gun. He was very afraid of using it and always ran the other way when he handled it.
By now, Clark is in more trouble than his former boss can help him with.
The charges against Clark have expanded. In addition to a charge of first-degree murder for killing Kathleen, he's also charged with assault with intent to rape, a weapons violation, and perverted practices.
Vernon Clark's trial for charges related to the July 1989 murder of Kathleen Goulden commences on April 2, 1991.
Clark pleads not guilty. He's represented by Barbara Craner, a public defender for nearby Carroll County.
The lab tests performed by the FBI showed that the pellets found in Kathleen Goulden's body matched the pellets seized by police at the rendering plant where Vernon Clark works.
The state will be arguing that Clark shot Miss Goulding through her bedroom window, using the 20-gauge shotgun he took from the rendering plant. And then sexually assaulted her as she lay dying on the floor.
In addition to police witnesses, friends and co-workers of Kathleen are called to testify.
The court hears testimony from people who say they saw Clark hanging around Kathleen's apartment building.
In Clark's defense, Pete Cavey, the manager at Braun's rendering plant, testifies that Clark is a good worker and has always refused to go near the shotgun at the plant, out of fear for the weapon.
On April 17th, Clark is convicted by a county jury of first-degree murder, assault with intent to rape, perverted practices, and a weapons violation. But what about the other cold case murder victims that Clark is suspected of killing? Will justice ever be served for them? Vernon Clark is on trial for the murder of 23-year-old Kathleen Patricia Goulden.
Police believe Clark may have met Kathleen at the Baltimore nightclub where she worked.
DNA evidence has connected him to the crime.
Certainly at the time, if you mentioned DNA and you had DNA evidence, you were pretty much guaranteed a win because it was so compelling to juries. So that was enough at the time to indict Vernon Clark.
Convicted of first-degree murder, assault with intent to rape, perverted practices, and use of a gun in a felony, Clark now awaits sentencing.
Howard County Circuit Judge Raymond J. Kane, Jr. sets the date, August 15th. But a curious thing happens.
On August 15th, both the judge and defense attorney Barbara Craner receive an anonymous handwritten letter insisting on Clark's innocence. The writer of the letter claims to be a witness with knowledge about Kathleen's murder.
The writer claims Kathleen's actual killer is 6 feet tall, has light brown skin, and a medium thick build. Now that's a description that does not fit Vernon Clark.
The writer, he or she, says they don't want an innocent man to go to jail, but they're reluctant to appear in court for fear of danger to their own life. Judge Kane postpones the sentencing until October 10th to give the public defender's office time to investigate the letter writer's claims that Clark is innocent.
A delay based on an anonymous letter is certainly unusual, but the court is willing to give the defense an opportunity to see if something might come of this.
A second letter arrives insisting on Clark's innocence. But after reviewing it, Craner determines it contains nothing to justify a new trial. After a 2-month delay, Vernon Clark is finally sentenced. Life plus 28 years in prison to be served at the Maryland Department of Corrections Annex in Jessup. Years go by. All the while, Howard and Baltimore County police work on cold case murders they reopened after obtaining Vernon Clark's DNA.
Finally, 10 years after Kathleen's murder, the August 5th, 1999, police end up charging Vernon Clark with killing both Dolly Davis and Evelyn Dietrich.
If you have that compelling evidence, it most likely will be good enough to take it to trial. It will probably be some sort of DNA, some sort of forensic evidence, which is always good. Some of the cases didn't have that biological material. Others may have had some at some point, but it was degraded to the point where nothing could be found.
In February 2001, Clark pleads guilty to first-degree murder in the stabbing death of Dolly Davis.
Our goal was always to try to get him to plea. He was already serving a life sentence, so we were seeking simply another life sentence on him in getting him to admit responsibility and hold him accountable for Dolly Davis's murder.
Clark remains the lone suspect in the remaining Howard County cold case murders.
It's April 2015. Clark is serving 3 life sentences in the Roxbury Correctional Institute in Hagerstown, Maryland, for the murders of Kathleen Goulden, Rebecca Davis, and Evelyn Dietrich. When at the age of 59, he is indicted by a Howard County grand jury in the murder of Iva Myrtle Watson. It's been 30 years since her death.
In the Iva Watson case, I distinctly remember the family being relieved that they now had an answer as to what happened. It wasn't a great answer.
Clark gets a 4th life sentence for Iva Watson's murder, but he has yet to be tied forensically to the Faulkner killings.
Vernon Clark was a young man when he began committing these incredibly violent crimes. He would have only been 23 when he killed Carville and Sarah Faulkner in 1979.
You wonder what had happened in his life by that point for him to be able to carry that out and to keep on killing.
Ultimately, police would consider Clark to be among the worst serial killers in the state's history.
Our goal was the same. We were just trying to hold him accountable for the sake of the families that were still around.
Whether by cunning or luck, Vernon Clark managed to evade the law throughout his decade-long murder spree. Perhaps it was his success that emboldened him to keep on killing. Until a pizza box connected Vernon Clark to a vicious crime, and he was finally caught.